Thanks, Amanda. All right, so our final speaker for the day, and it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Rachel Gallagher. Dr. Gallagher studied kidney development during her graduate work in Europe. She then transitioned to studying the molecular mechanisms underlying ADPKD, which led her to Yale School of Medicine in the United States. At Yale, she worked alongside Dr. Stephen Somlow, studying the function of ARPKD gene, the PKHD1. As her career progressed, she developed a keen interest in translational approaches to treating PKD. In late 2020, she made a significant career transition to biotech, joining Goldfinch Bio as a principal scientist. Her experience at Goldfinch Bio paved way for her current role as the director of biology at a venture-backed company. Here, she has the exciting opportunity to build a company focused on developing therapies for ADPKD. With that, Dr. Gallagher?
Great, thank you. Can you all hear me? Yeah, okay, great. I'm just gonna share my screen. Let's see, trying to make sure there's nothing proprietary out there. Great, thank you so much for the kind introduction. I'm just going to, yeah, okay. Super delighted to be asked to talk to you all today about my journey or my career journey, and has taken me from a very academic focused career to a one in now in biotech. One thing I want to disclose is I am an employee and I do have equity in a new company that is spun out of the 5AM Ventures group. So here's kind of like an idea of the years I've spent in academia and then my current history in biotech. And one thing I want to have a disclaimer is I've only worked in small biotech or very early new companies. I haven't worked in big pharma. So my opinions are really based on my own personal experience. And also my opinions are mine. They're not reflective of my employer, my past or current employers. So with the introduction, yes, I did get my PhD at Cardiff University. My PhD was based on kidney development. I fell in love with the kidney way back then, and thankfully I've stuck with it ever since. I think one of the seminal kind of experiences was really at my time at Yale as research faculty. That's where I really got to kind of expand my network really through in the field as well as my research focus. I was very fortunate when I joined Yale to be awarded a PKD Foundation grant. As an international investigator, I couldn't apply for any NIH grants, so really the charities were really important for funding my research early on. I think one of the key things working at Yale was it was very much a collaborative environment. So not only within the Somlo lab, but also there were other labs. And so got to meet a lot of different people. I got to mentor a lot of really wonderful students and postdocs during my time there. Again, the experience has led me to present at national and international conferences. And one thing I would like to advocate, I think this is a message that I think is reflective throughout the number of talks in this trainee session is, because of the funding from the PKD Research Foundation, I became actively involved in the Walk for PKD in the Connecticut chapter. I was a volunteer initially from 2008 all the way up to 2016, I believe. And that's where I teamed up with one of an ADPKD patient, a very young and enthusiastic person named Chelsea. We ended up leading the Walk for PKD for the Connecticut chapter for the last 4 to 5 years. And so really getting engaged with the patient community was key to kind of making me think a little bit beyond of what I was doing at the bench. I really loved what I studied. I really liked the fact that I could work on my own hypotheses and ideas. But one thing I recognized towards, as I grew within my role, that not a lot of my work was really translational. Although every sentence that ended in my grant application was always like, this has potential for therapeutic intervention. After working in biotech for the last couple of years, I realized how far removed I was from that. But yeah, really getting involved with patients, getting involved with the foundation and the people really want to help promote you and the research. In 2020, I was given an opportunity. So I knew the hiring manager at Goldfinch Bio, who used to be a postdoc in the neighboring lab at Yale. And she was working, she was I know, worked at Goldfinch and recognized that nobody on their team actually worked in the kidney space, which was kind of shocking as it was pitched as a kidney company. I decided I really wanted to learn something new and grow my skills, not just, as a bench scientist, but just more in the business development side and learning about what it takes to get a drug from conception to the patient. So yeah, I joined as a principal scientist. That role involved me doing a lot more bench work as well as doing transitioning a little bit more into business development. The group there recognized that I was a KOL or key opinion leader in the space and got involved a lot in the pitching to research partners or big pharma as well as investors. Within a year of being there, I also got promoted to director of biology. So this is really one thing I recognized in the biotech or in that particular company. I was surrounded by individuals who really helped me grow quite quickly, as well as supported me, helped train me, learned all the different acronyms that as Aaron alluded to, the terminology is quite different, and the focus and the questions that they have are different. But I'm very fortunate that I got to work with some really great teams, as well as leaders and mentors. I really am grateful for that. And that also opened up an opportunity for me to kind of join the company where I'm at now. I actually met my CSO, the Chief Scientific Officer of this company at Goldfinch. And I was recruited here as a director of biology to help build the company, which is really exciting. Um, and part of that role in the last year has been really to be involved very, very early with the venture firm that's funding this company to help devise and execute the research strategy, as well as the drug development plan. I'm heavily involved in preparing and presenting pitches to VCs and partners. One of my biggest kind of goals this year was to source and build out the lab here in Berkeley, hire the team, the research team, run all the general ops. I'm kind of a Jill of all trades, I would say right now. You wear many hats at this early stage. So I think it's not just lab work. I'm still doing some bench work. Obviously, while we were trying to hire out the team, we still need to get things up and running. We manage contract organizations. I'm involved in setting up contracts and agreements. But it's really a multifaceted role right now, which I really, really enjoy. I do think some of the time that I spent at Yale, I believe helped me made this job a little bit easier especially with the lab ops and the vendors setting up contracts, things like that. Because I think one of the roles I had at Yale that isn't depicted here, I was kind of like the chief of staff for the Somno group. I was involved in safety, regulatory, animal protocols. I was doing an awful lot of lab ops, and so I think that really was a huge benefit to the role I have today. So less of me. I really would like to talk about some of the myths there are about academia and industry. And again, I can only talk about my current experience in small biotech or new companies. So these are kind of the key things that I think people have misconceptions about. It's like, well, first of all, compensation, I would say, yes, the average pay is more. And I think the opportunity to earn more apart from your base salary are there. You can get bonuses, you can have equity. And there along the way, the companies often give impact awards. These are financially based awards. So yeah, on the financial side, has my life improved? Yes, significantly. Work-life balance. I would say academia has a flexible work schedule. I do think in a small biotech, I feel like I have one foot in an academic background and one foot in an industry background. The schedule is more flexible.
Two
I would
minutes.
say, oh, okay, more flexible. I still think it's not a 9 to 5. It's a bit more than that, depending on your role, of course. Teamwork, 100%. Teamwork is essential. If you like to work alone or independently, this is not the environment for you. Teamwork is really a big focus when we were hiring out our team. I think as Lawrence, somebody mentioned earlier about, people have skills. We have some very talented, skilled scientists in the world, but really, are you the right fit for our team? And can you work and grow with us is really one of the key things that we think about when we're hiring our team. Flexibility. ownership, less ownership. We are all working towards a common goal. We're working on company projects, and the ability to pivot. So leadership often make business decisions. That means that maybe you have to drop your project and work on something else. So I think not being married to your project or not being married to your hypothesis is key, and this to be ability to be flexible in that way. Deadlines and time pressure is 100% true. I think I feel like I'm always under a time gun here. Again, that motivates me. That's how I like to work with deadlines. If you're not a fan of deadlines, it's again not probably the best environment for you. It is very focused work. I do think that there's definitely more structure here. You have goals and you have timelines, and we make decisions on regular milestones. Credit, I think, as a investigator in academia, you do get more credit for your discovery. In small biotech, I would say you have regular interactions with leadership. And so everybody knows you, everybody understands your contribution to the team. I'd say in big pharma, and again, my disclaimer is I've never worked in big pharma. I think you're a bit more siloed. You're not necessarily known in other parts of the company. You may not get external credit for your work.
Time.
Uh, okay, sorry. Professional growth, I think it's better opportunities. I think your career is really helped. Professional growth is very important in industry. They pay a lot of attention to that. And then job security, I would say job security isn't as safe anymore anywhere. There are a lot of layoffs, as you'll see, in both big pharma and small biotech. Um, and I think we're all looking for funding. I did have a last slide based on like skills that you can translate, but I guess I don't have time anymore. But we can have this in the discussion maybe. I think there's a lot I've learned. Grant writing was a huge asset to me, especially when building out research strategy. Mentoring students and postdocs, huge for team building and recruiting of other people and knowing what you need. Finance and fundraising is definitely a big factor in small biotech. We're always looking for the next round of fundraising and generating data to support that. And then the biggest thing I would say to you is really use your network. I think really attend conferences, present at conferences, connect with people on LinkedIn, go to networking events. And I guess Twitter or X now is definitely a big thing with social media presence. Yeah, sorry, I went over time, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gallagher, and especially this slide of yours that you have on the screen. I
Oh,
think that's going to
sorry.
be a really
Okay,
good
I'll leave it there. Sorry.
conversation starter. Oh, that's all right.
There we go.
Yeah, I mean, you can take that off. It's fine.
That's
We
fine.
can always chat about these things in the next session that we have. Um, I have a question for you. So,
Mhm.
when you joined these companies, what was the interview like?
Very well, lengthy. Obviously, I joined during COVID, so my first interview with Goldfinch was all remote. I probably had 15 hours. I met with my hiring manager. I met with the kind of the scientific leader, and then once they along the process, then you meet with the bigger team. You meet with the individuals that you're actually going to directly work with. When we hire, you know, we definitely meet with individuals. Scientists usually give a presentation as part of their interview. It's very similar, I think, to an academic interview when you're looking for faculty positions. You meet with individuals, they go, and then we have a debrief. So we all meet afterwards and we kind of rank people based on the conversations we have. We also try and share the interview process in that not everybody asks the same questions. So each person, when you're interviewing with you, they have a specific thing that they want to kind of tease out of you, like your team, if you're a team player or not, or things that you've written in your CV, do they actually fit with what you're actually presenting? Yeah.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat. Is obtaining an MBA after a PhD at all beneficial in transitioning to industry from academia?
Um, I don't think so. I'm learning on the job, which is really what I'm excited about. I think it depends on what stage you're at, honestly, but it depends on where you want to go. If business development is an area you want to move into, I think I know and there's quite a few people who are PhD trained or MD trained working in business development. Not necessarily an MBA is required.
Um, what's your opinion on industrial postdoc, if you have any?
I think so. Again, it depends. I think the industrial postdoc, is that with the partnership with a big pharma like Amgen? Yeah,
Yeah, Eli Lilly,
yeah,
Thermo, Sigma, they
yeah.
all offer ones. Yeah.
I think that's a great transition. I do think we do want to hire people, although we're very open right now. We're open to hiring the right people for the role and the team. So not having industry experience as a young scientist is not critical in our book. But I think having an industrial postdoc, if you have an opportunity to do that, I think that's a great segue.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. And you briefly mentioned the funding landscape in industry. So how does the funding landscape look different in industry than it does in academia? And is that yes, that I'm sorry,
That's
being awkward.
no, that's a very good question. We're dependent on the markets, right? So our funding is very much dependent on how the market is. I think one advantage I have is one thing we have, working with a venture-backed company is really they have a network of their own, so they know who's interested in this space. They know who's going to be interested in what we're I don't use my network for the fundraising. We're using the venture for network. But yeah, it's all depending on the markets, the disease area, the focus, and also the strength of the team and the company, and what assets we currently have with regards to, if we're working on a small molecule, what does that look like, and how close are we to the clinic, really will be the one that raises the most amount of money. So early discovery is not always attractive for raising money. So you always try and work hard to get your product as close to the clinic as possible.
Thank you, Dr. Gallagher. That was really interesting. I guess I'll see you in the next session, the panel discussion session. Victoria, do you want to take over?
Sure. Thank you so much, Bob.
Yeah.
And thank you so much to thank you so much to all of the speakers. I believe we still have 4 out of 5 speakers with us. So we'd like to thank everyone for their presentations, and would like to now offer the opportunity to the audience to ask more broad questions of everyone. So we welcome any questions that you may have that expand on anything presented in the talks, or any other topics you would like the panel to discuss. Please type your questions into the chat, and we, the moderators, will read and select questions to ask the panel members. And some versions of Zoom have the ability to upvote questions you'd like to have answered. So please feel free to use this feature if you have it available. If you see somebody else's question, you can click the little reaction button, and that will allow us to find the questions a little bit more easily. So to get us started, I would like to ask our panelists, what is one piece of career advice you wish you'd known early in your career? Or alternatively, what is something you wish you had done differently to kind of help you get a leg up, if that makes sense? And please, I'm asking either Christine, Elise, Aaron, or Rachel. Thank you so much for your participation.
I think depending on I think for both academia and pharma, or what other industry you want to go into, I think your network is really key. I think networking is going to be a big factor. It's hard if you're shy, and I get that. Sometimes you have to go out of your comfort zone and introduce yourself to people. And I think don't be afraid. People will remember your face and your name, and that really stands out. I think networking is key for anything. The other, making sure you have a career mentor. So this is different from your research mentor. This is one piece of advice somebody gave me a long time ago, and I 100% agree with that. Your research mentor has a different focus for you and what they want you to achieve when you're working with them. I think having somebody who's independent and agnostic to that is really, again, something I would strongly advocate you get. Somebody who's a career mentor who can help guide you.
I would also say that having, I wish Lawrence was here because she preaches that. Having open conversations with your mentor early on about what your goals are. I think it's kind of an unwritten rule or even a requirement that people feel that if I'm doing my PhD, for example, in an academic setting, that my mentor presumes that I want to remain in academia, right? And a lot of people, when you really have an honest conversation with them, don't want that. They have a different goal. They didn't have a different ambition, and it's okay. And I think we, as people, more senior people in the field, not aging myself here, but I think we need to encourage folks to have that conversation openly and help those individuals gain the skills that are necessary for whatever line of work they want to do, whatever career that they're trying to pursue. It's okay to be different than what your mentor is.
You have a great question in the chat. How do you get a career mentor?
I can answer part of that, Rachel, if it's okay if I interject. So I want to answer both the original question and this question. So Rachel actually shared with me the advice about the career mentor, and I asked Rachel to be my career mentor at a conference. And, every time I saw her at a conference, I was either in my PhD or my postdoc going through some kind of existential crisis about what to do next. So I presented everything that I had in my brain, advantages and, pros and cons of my choices. And Rachel gave me feedback, and it was kind of like a nice supportive third party. So really all you have to do is ask. And I also want to throw another promo out to some advice from Christine, which I'm not sure if you will remember, but during one of these different meetings, you talked about your experience from going from science to a non-research position, and kind of the identity change from being a scientist to a supportive or a regulatory role, and not being afraid to make that change. And that was really huge in me expanding my options for my future career.
I'm glad it helped.
Yeah, I have to say, I tried to recruit Erin in my last role, by the way. So I do think, really, I mean, at Yale, I saw that I kind of chose Barbara Ehrlich. She's a professor in pharmacology in this space. And I think as a woman in academia, I really wanted to talk to somebody who'd kind of been through a harder, what during her time was a harder path forward, as a woman in science. And then in industry, I've chosen another female leader who I used to work with. And again, I have regular Zoom calls once a quarter with her and go over certain things that I'm finding challenging. How would she deal with this situation? And again, I think the worst thing people say is they don't have time or no, but I do think if you're a graduate student or early postdoc and you're looking at an academic career, choose maybe somebody that's on your committee or somebody who's in your department, maybe doesn't have anything to do with your PKD research or kidney research, but there are people out there who are very willing to help.
Would you all mind talking a little bit more about that identity shift of realizing how, or just when you knew it was time to transition away from being a bench scientist, and how those new opportunities, you went about seeking them, and what made it, I know this is a really difficult thing to put into words, but how you knew that this was the right choice?
Oh, I didn't. I would say I took a leap of faith thinking, it's a unique opportunity to be able to stay in the kidney disease space. And so I really wanted to make sure when I did transition, it was going to be in the kidney. I was very nervous. I had no idea what to expect. I think one advantage was I knew my hiring manager, and I knew that she would help guide me. I think I had I was very lucky there. And I also thought, oh, if I don't like it, I know Steve will always have me back there. I always had this kind of feeling of like I would always be welcome back if I really didn't like it. But it just turned out that I really love the fast-paced, timeline-driven, focused research, and I think just translational. Really, I'm learning a lot. I think that's where again, no idea that this was going to be my thing.
I agree with Rachel. I didn't grow up saying I was going to be a program officer. And that wasn't my life ambition. It was serendipity how I came across the position. I was not looking necessarily to leave academic research. I was well funded. In fact, gave back 2 grants when I had to leave, when I left. So it wasn't the lack of funding that disillusioned me or anything like that. It was just serendipitous. But what I do want to kind of point out is that I don't think you're ever ready. And I'll say that now from experience of, we've just recently posted for a position for a program officer, and I've been on the search committee and trying to find that person. A lot of people I spoke to say, I'm not sure that I'm ready. And it's that kind of same thing as feeling for those of you who have children. Are you ever prepared to have a child? I don't think that ever there is a time. You just take that leap of faith. But to be honest, as I'm getting older, and what was a deal breaker for me was the culture, the environment that I was going to work in, the people that I was going to work with. That made it more important to me than the actual job itself. I know that I can do whatever I want, as long as I have the support and collegiality of people around me. So I think to me, that was something that helped me make that decision and transition.
Yeah, and I'll follow up with that. I guess I kind of fall in between. So ironically, I actually went to University of Maryland to become a toxicologist for the FDA. It's in my IDP back from 2014. But because the PKD research community was so inviting and inclusive and exciting, I really tried to see what options were there in academic research. And kind of like Christine was saying, the opportunity I had for my current position kind of came randomly. I was looking for different opportunities just to see what was out there. And actually, my current supervisor reached out to me from a totally other position that I had applied for. And she said, I see you have toxicology, like on your CV, would you like to chat? And so it kind of came full circle, not by any strategic planning on my part.
We're talking about decision making. I have a question on decision making. If you're in a situation where you want to be in a field that's not heavily funded, but as opposed to other fields like cancer, where there is a lot of money. So how do you decide? You want to be in the field that you love, or do you want to move to a field that has a lot of money and more opportunities? But again, the field with more money, you're also competing against the giants.
Yeah, so do you want to be a small fish in a big pond or vice versa, right? I would think that it'll be easier to carve out a niche in an area that is smaller because you don't have as much competition and you can stand out better, especially when you're starting out. You know that what reviewers are looking for. Is this person independent? How are you ever going to reach that when you're competing with everybody else and everybody's doing something similar? That's my perspective, not necessarily the right answer.
I think I will add something about why I stayed in academia for so long is I really loved what I was working on. And I think being really interested in the science and the questions you want answered, I think is really important to get you through the tough times. And so just switching fields or working in a bigger field, as long as you're doing the science or the work that's interesting to you, I think that's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, and even though I was in academia for a much shorter time, I would say the same, because I don't think I even would have considered research if I hadn't fallen in love with the kidney so much. I mean, I have a kidney mug, a kidney cookie cutter, kidney artwork. Like I love the kidney. And so I really think that, it is hard, depending on what the funding situation is, but you have to really love what you're studying, or else it's going to be hard to pick up that pipette every day.
Just quickly, a question here. If someone wants to go to industry and wants to do an industrial postdoc, is it better to go to a big or a small company?
I think you go to the team that's the right fit for you. I think that would be my answer. I think when you interview, one of the things is, don't forget, in addition to them interviewing you, you have to interview them, because it's also whoever is your manager or the person you report to is going to be really that relationship is critical, whether it's academia or in industry. And I think one thing I recognize in the smaller biotech is that I get to be exposed to very different job titles. So I didn't know there was so many variety of different jobs I could do as a PhD scientist that didn't involve the bench at all. Like business development, project management is a massive one. Clinical trials, there's a lot of and regulatory, right? So Erin, I might be knocking on your door again one day. But I think there's a huge amount of career opportunities. And I think with small biotech, you kind of get exposed to a lot more of that. I think in big pharma, you probably are more siloed into the role that you have, and you don't really kind of deviate from that. But yeah, it just depends on what you want to get out of it. But honestly, at the end of the day, it's whoever is your hiring manager or the person or the team you're going to work with, how that kind of works for you. I think that's really important.
I know you kind of addressed this earlier about job security, but do you think, applying to small biotechs or a startup like that comes with a huge risk as well?
High risk, high reward, right? That's the term we use a lot. I don't think even so. Yes, there is more risk now, especially nowadays with the way the markets are. But I have an awful lot of friends who work for Pfizer, work for J&J. Nobody is really particularly protected. I think big pharma, you're involved in layoffs too. I think it's really seeking out a role where you can learn new skills that you can translate to many different things, maybe is what I would suggest, especially if you're a young investigator or a young career person. I don't think it's particularly safe anymore. It doesn't matter if it's small or large.
So I had a question for everybody. So what is the best way to, if you know exactly, or if you have a general idea about what career you want to transition to next that is not academics, for example, if you want to go into advocacy or foundation type research, like what are the best ways to identify what holes you might have in your experience and how best to go about seeking out the additional training opportunities to fill those holes to make you the most employable?
This is just a short answer and may not always be the best, but honestly, interviewing, when people ask you questions, because you can prepare as much as you want, but you don't know what they're going to ask on a specific day with a specific person. And so just having that experience, thinking back to my interviews for my current position, I have no idea what I even said. And we're in the process of interviewing new people for our team right now. And so it's just like, oh, like, how would I have answered that then versus now? And so really just the experience of answering questions. And it could be with your career mentor acting as a proxy as well. It doesn't have to be like a true interview.
And I think one thing, if you're interested in, say, for example, you want to go into project management, seek somebody out in LinkedIn or somewhere that you can connect with, and maybe just get some one-on-one time with them and ask them what are the key things that got them that role or led them to get to that role. I'd say don't be afraid to reach out to strangers. Really, somebody will answer you.
Amanda, do you want to read out your question?
Absolutely. So I was interested in what kind of skill sets academics could bring to the foundation space, and if there are opportunities if you've seen people successfully have a foot in both worlds, in academia and the nonprofit space.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So I think what's really interesting is that especially small, more rare disease nonprofits like ours, we're really interested in strategy of accelerating therapeutic development, right? So we see this especially in probably our PKD Outcomes Consortium, where we have, former scientists or current scientists who are helping us think about the challenges and barriers that therapies are having and getting into clinical trials, through approval. And you need scientists with those minds to really think about creating new tools, the kind of data sets and analyses that we need to argue for new biomarkers. So I think there's a lot of potential there for bridging the gap between nonprofits who are trying to support that work and then Outcomes Consortium and other areas who are building tools. I know there are a number of larger nonprofits where they have a patient registry, for example. They really need a lot of help with biostatistics and outcomes research and thinking about applying some of that data around care access. But if we're thinking more about the deeper science, I think I'd really just see a huge pathway there for thinking about that link between research discovery and ultimate approval of therapies.
Yeah, I have another question. So, how difficult is it to transition back to India after, academia after spending several years, being in industry, doing policy, or even industrial research as such?
I'm going to talk about that question from an NIH perspective because it's something that we've identified as a huge gap. We don't have pathways for people to return or on-ramps to enter the career path at early stage. Like everybody who talks about career, it's like a pipeline. It's not a pipeline. There's no straight line for anyone that I've ever met in my life. It goes every which way, right? So how do we enable that? Actually, I was going to raise my hand and say, can I ask you a question? What is it that you want from funding agencies or even industry? How do you, what do you need to prepare? Do you feel prepared to go out in the world and change your line of research? And what is it that we can do to enable that? I'd really like to know.
I will say, like, making a decision to leave academia or transition to the regulatory space, it felt extremely permanent. And I know this from a lot of my other colleagues who have made similar moves as well. Some of them have talked about research and they're like, I don't even know if that's an option. Maybe I could go back as a lab manager. So it's kind of interesting because and I think that goes with the identity question of viewing yourself as a scientist. Maybe people would keep on to that if there was some method to re-enter at a later point, because as you said, Christine, the life cycle or seasons that are constantly changing. So, maybe that would be of interest to people later on.
I agree. I still think about maybe one day I'll go back. But again, I think there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered. And I did leave a lot of projects behind, which are near and dear to my heart. I think there's quite a few people who do transition from industry back to academia. And I think it'd be great if the NIH was able to kind of support that for sure.
And I just wanted to add, I've heard a major thing that we have in longevity of keeping regulatory scientists is they often switch back to industry as well. And there's a give and take between, people that work at the FDA and industry. So, kind of finishing that triangle out with academia as well. I mean, it may create a more powerful, research workforce in the future.
It really requires a general culture shift when you think about these issues, because the way we, for example, value academics is, how many grants did you have, or how many publications did you have? Now, if you were out of the academic research for a while, you're not going to have as many grants or publications. So we're going to hold those people to the same standards, if you will. I think the standards of how we evaluate success in any line of scientific realm need to be reevaluated.
I completely agree. And I'm really glad this question got brought up because it's something that my peers and I talk about all the time, especially because we are just finishing postdocs and changing careers and positions. So really great question.
Do you speakers have any questions to ask someone yourself? I don't know. You guys might be interested in asking some questions that you've always had. This is an opportunity for you guys as well.
It's great. I know Elise and Erin very well for many years. I think we always meet at the ASN, and well, maybe not Erin this year, but you know, we do. I think the one thing I like about the conferences is you do get to meet up with people and have more one-on-one discussions about, you know, what they're working on, what, you know, how we can help each other really. So yeah, I'm very fortunate. I'm really lucky. I'm working in industry or biotech, and I'm still working in PKD, which is really phenomenal. It's very unusual, I think. And I still think about, you know, how we can work together towards making the next best therapy. I think it takes not just industry. I think we need to work with the foundation. We need to work with regulatory, the Critical Path Institute. I think it's definitely a team effort.
Yeah, and you know, I'd love to hear from this group or from people in the audience through the chat. You know, how can we support you when you're having these conversations, when you're creating your network, when you're looking for, you know, other opportunities? So we have, you know, our fellowship. Should we be trying to fund more fellowships, or should we be putting money towards travel grants to conferences? You know, what kind of support do you need to stay in PKD? Because as great as it is to hear stories about folks leaving academia, we want to keep PKD researchers in the pipeline. And so, you know, what can we do as a organization that wants to support you? Just love to hear any ideas. Oh, travel funds, great. I was hoping we'd get some response to that, but yeah, just very open to that.
I agree. I think travel funds are key. At least I think that was one thing that was kind of missing, especially for young trainees. I think that, you know, especially with the FACID meeting, which I think is one of the best meetings for PKD researchers. It's very expensive, and I think if the foundation was able to support that with some travel funds, that would be awesome for the young people. Yeah.
Does the foundation also host any networking events?
We are probably our biggest one is that PKD conference with the research symposium. You know, we had goals and dreams to have that every year, and then the pandemic happened, and then everyone got really comfortable virtual, and we're trying to figure out the best way to support that networking while making it accessible. So we're still thinking through whether we should have those virtually every year, or whether we should just combine with another event we know is happening and support, you know, travel and attendance. So I think we're very open to ideas. Making networking accessible, I think, is one of my top priorities. I just want to give people access to, you know, I want to give young investigators access to experienced ones, and vice versa, because the more ideas we have flowing, the better. So
I don't know how this would work in practice, and I'm kind of just coming off the hip with this, but if there was a way to give trainees which again, grant timelines and everything might make this hard, but a training sabbatical in PKD labs, like a, you know, 3-month research stint where they can come in and work in these PKD labs, and they could be people within the kidney field or without. You know, it would give them exposure to PKD research. It may make long-term collaborations. You know, you could bring someone from mathematical modeling, or, you know, and again, I know that would be very hard. There's a lot of factors at play, but, you know, it could kind of prolong people's interest, because, you know, sometimes if you're training in PKD, they encourage you to get experience other places. And, you know, this could kind of bring that all together to keep your research journey on the PKD track.
You know, the PKD RRC, who's organized this entire meeting, offers something like that, Erin, where you can take advantage of you know, another lab within the consortium. Actually, it has to be within the consortium that you can go and do some training and, you know, learn some new skills.
Yes, and I think that's a great program. I think that's newer since when I was there, but I'm very excited that that is, you know, starting to gain momentum.
So we have a question here. So it's for Elise. How do I get more involved with the foundation, especially to help increase foundation funds from the government?
Yeah, no, advocacy is our number one, most impactful program in that regard. It's just so fantastic that people from all over the country talking to their congressmen, making sure that they hear PKD and kidney disease as much as possible. You know, I think we all understand the great cost that is going into dialysis and end-stage renal disease, and just thinking about ways that we can prevent people from reaching that stage. You know, I think there's a lot of desire to invest in that. It's just the more people, the more voices we have raised for that, the better. So, you know, please do sign up for our advocacy work. Once a year in February, we sign letters from various research institutions to specific committee members who are responsible for you know, providing dedicated funds to each of the NIH institutions, to the DoD. So it's great to have more names on there as well. And even if you're an international trainee, it's still great to have you as a member of those research teams sign on to that kind of thing. So yeah, sign up for our newsletters and our advocacy alerts, and then reach out to me too if you want something more active. But that's going to be most impactful. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, Elise, do you guys do like a Hill Day? I used to really enjoy those with APS, and it was always like kind of reinvigorating, especially as a research scientist.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have a virtual Hill Day in the spring. We're thinking about doing something in person, but again, we're really trying to maximize accessibility. So there's a bit of a give and take there. But yeah, every spring we have an advocacy day. And I believe last year we had 25 different states that had advocates, and we arrange the meetings, we arrange the Zooms, we do all the scheduling, and basically you just block that day off your calendar, and then we let you know when to be on a Zoom. We give you all the tools, all the talking points. So even if you just want to kind of see what that looks like, there's always patients in the room telling their stories, which we find that stories are often more powerful than numbers. So it's just a really great experience if you're interested in just seeing what it's like.
Elise, do you want to share your email? Do you mind that?
Yes, I'll put it in the chat.
Lovely.
I feel there was another speaker. I know Lawrence had to leave, but we're not letting somebody else speak. Who was the sixth speaker?
I think it was just the five.
Five?
So,
okay. All right.
So, but thank you, Christine, making sure no one was left out. So, it seems like we don't have any more questions in the chat, but we have, so I think since we started a little bit late, I'm going to give anybody the opportunity now. If you have any other burning questions, please type them in the chat now, and we will ask them. If anyone has any final thoughts they would like to share.
Yeah, I'd love to share a final comment. Just thinking about building
before
skills.
we adjourn,
Oh, sorry, Amanda.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say, as far as building
I
skills,
was just gonna point out that
Oh, am I on a lag? Okay, sorry. As far as building skills, I just wanted to point out that I think the ability to talk about translationability, no matter where your science is just so important, especially as you get early, you know, later in your career. Maybe you are applying for, you know, larger grants. There's a lot of organizations who are now utilizing stakeholder reviewers. The DoD has consumer reviewers. We use them. A lot of other nonprofit advocacy organizations use stakeholders. And so just being able to practice speaking to larger impact once, you know, in the clinic, it's just really great to have that skill set. And yeah, if you have any questions about that, I would love to answer them for you. That's part of why we have stakeholders in our review, so that we can help people practice for their larger DoD grants. So we just find it to be really valuable, and it adds a little extra element too, I think, to some of the science. Go ahead, Amanda. I'm done.
no worries. Sorry, I think it's actually me lagging. I just wanted to point out that Dr. Boytet did have to leave, but she shared her email. I shared her email in the chat around 3:10 if you scroll back through, and that she had a resource guide for job or task crafting that's available to you all to download in the chat as well.
And I'll add one just quick thing. You know, if you're worried about career development and what's going to happen in the future, you've already made the most important first step, which is being a trainee in PKD research.
And I'm going to extend that thought even further. If you're thinking about a career other than what other people wanted you to do in life, you've already made a huge step by being honest with yourself and thinking laterally and keeping your options open. Anything is possible. And I'm sure, you know, with what Rachel was promoting is networking. I know it's maybe difficult for people who don't necessarily like interpersonal relationships all that much. There's email still. There's other ways of communicating these days that would help you establish that network, even if you're not getting out there physically. So don't give up.
Incredible advice. Don't give up. I love that. So I guess, anybody else? Final thoughts? Rachel, did you have a final thought?
No, I think Elise, Erin, and Christine said things very well. And I would say the only thing is you are your best advocate. And I think if you know, don't wait for somebody else to come and help you along your career path. I think you really have to kind of forge that on your own. I think sometimes people misunderstand that their mentor is like there for their career. And I think this is where you really have to kind of be your own advocate in whatever you pursue. And also, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I can't really share my work email because we're in stealth mode, but I can definitely help, you know, guide or connect you with people if you think that there's somebody in my network that I can help you as well in your career. I'm also going to be at the ASN. Happy to still be connected in the Renal Week situation. So again, if you see me in the PKD sessions, stop and say hi. You know, we will be recruiting hopefully as we grow.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, well, I think we're going to end, since we started late, I think we're going to end a little bit early. So I want to take this opportunity to thank the panelists so much for their very insightful talks and their incredible career advice and all of their time this afternoon. And thank you so much to my co-moderators who helped organize this session. And thank you to Nicole for keeping us on task. And thanks to all of you for participating in the session. And we look out for the survey from the consortium, letting them know how you enjoyed the trainee session. Hopefully you enjoyed the trainee session. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but thank you all so much for all of your time. And we hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.